Alright, welcome pen friends, this is Tom with Goldspot Pens, here with an unboxing that's not live, but still just as exciting. Today we have from our friends in South Korea, from Colorverse, we have our own Goldspot Pens exclusive Colorverse ink. And this ink set is called Aurora Borealis. It is a special edition collaboration with Colorverse, and the concept behind it is very much so the scientific aspect of the sun's solar winds interacting with the magnetosphere that is in the magnetic field on Earth. And what the result is, you have two different bottles, of which you're familiar with if you know Colorverse inks. Colorverse inks come in a 2-pack, of which usually there is the larger 65 ml bottle and a smaller 15 ml bottle. It's very cute. The bottle designs themselves are glass, and they have quite the fun sort of teardrop look. The thing though is usually the inks are the same color, and in recent seasons they have made them where there is a larger color that is different from the smaller color, but this is the first time that both colors are actually engineered to be mixed together. So the concept goes from the scientific aspect of, well, the solar winds hit the magnetosphere and then cause the Aurora Borealis colors, to this is what you have here with inks, is that the solar wind would meet then with the magnetosphere ink and create a different array of colors that you could then write with. So in a usual box of Colorverse ink, you would also get an accoutrement of different items, which would include a bookmark, a napkin, and a couple of stickers, which this is the proofs, so these look a little bit rough around the edges. So this is the proof that we received from them before we had gone and agreed to the special edition and put the green light on it. So we'll put all this stuff aside. This is just fun extra things to play around with when you have the chance. But the main aspect is the ink colors themselves, of course. And a useful item to have as well is the Ink Miser, developed by the same people who also distribute Noodlers and Colorverse ink. The Ink Miser is a simple tool that any ink enthusiast would love to have and would make a lot of use of, especially if you're mixing inks. So this is the Inkshot Inkwell. It's essentially a plastic cone with a base, and what this allows you to do is to fill up your pen. Let's say if you have a piston filler or something that's a little bit more difficult, like let's say if you're down to the very end of your bottle of ink here and you need to get it into a container that'll be easier to fill from, this is what you would use. Or if we're doing it for this purpose, which is mixing ink, this is also good for that as well. What I did here was include well, this is not included in the box. This is an eyedropper from an Opus 88 pen. This is pipette is actually included with the Ink Miser. So this is what you would use then to transfer the ink from the bottle to the Inkshot Inkwell. And I brought two. I brought this extra because I wanted two different ways of being able to sample both of these inks and put them in the Inkwell. So there's quite a few different ways you can mix this. I would start out with Solar Wind. And I brought my J. Urban glass dip pen. I also brought out a Leonardo pen to fill up with our resulting ink that we'll come up with. But this glass dip pen will be good for showing like a base of what we have to start off with is in terms of color. So I could just dip this here. I could do So that's Colorverse Solar Wind. It's quite saturated on the paper there in terms of its wetness right now, so it looks a little bit on the darker side, but this is quite a light turquoise-like blue. I'm just gonna rinse off and dry off the dip pen nib here. Put this off to the side, and then we'll take some magnetosphere. And we'll get a little dip of this. So magnetosphere is a rich, dark violet ink. It's like almost like an eggplant color ink. So you get the idea here is that you have a large amount of a undersaturated lighter ink, and you have a small amount of a far more saturated dense ink to then combine and play with and figure out which formulation of it that you would like to fill with your pen. So now let's play. Let's take our Ink Miser Inkshot Inkwell, and we'll use this guy here. Fill up the eyedropper, and then what I usually like to do is just to figure out what the formulation is, record it for later purposes. I'll count the drops. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Alright, so we'll do 20 parts of Solar Wind. And I've already played around with this a bit before, so you could see the results on the product page for the Aurora Borealis special edition on Goldspot.com. On the additional images, you'll be able to see some different permutations you could come up with. So I'll put 1 drop. I'll do 2 drops. So 2 drops of the magnetosphere with 20 drops of the Solar Wind. And we'll just mix that up. So as you can see, it changed the color quite drastically from the original Solar Wind just by adding a very, very small amount of magnetosphere. It has gone from a turquoise light blue to a medium toned sort of royal blue, and this is it's just phenomenal just to be able to see the range that you could get with this. And the color is still really nice and rich on the paper. I mean, yes, I am using a dip nib, so it does put a little bit more flow on the page than a usual, let's say, fountain pen, but that's why we've brought a fountain pen out, just to kind of give a little bit of a test that way too, and to show how this would work as far as filling up a fountain pen with the ink shot. So we could play around with it a little bit more. I might want it to be like, let's say, a little bit lighter. So let's see if we add a bit more Solar Wind to the mixture, that it would come out to be a bit more lighter. And you could certainly use these inks without mixing them. You could use them just by themselves if you like. Magnetosphere is not that super saturated that you would have to be concerned about your pen's safety. Any of the Colorverse inks are safe to use for fountain pens. So let's try out what this mixture has for us here. Now this is a bit less purpley. You can see it's a little less purple, a little bit more blue. Still has more saturation than the original, of course, but it really does have a very interesting ability to kind of go from, let's say, the deep purple to the lighter stages of blue. So let's take a look at now filling it up in a fountain pen. And this is the Leonardo Furore fountain pen, which has the converter attached. And what I'll do is I'll just move the piston all the way down, and then see if I can just try to do this while showing you all here. I'm able to get pretty fulfill the converter there with a little bit more to spare. So then I'll just wipe this off here. Okay. Put the barrel back on. So this is a Leonardo. And this is broad nib. So definitely, I mean, you could see there's definite a big difference between, let's say, using a dip nib and then using a fountain pen nib, because you could automatically just see the lighter color and a bit more shading as well. So you could see that this this version of the mixture shades a bit more. And this is solar wind and magnetosphere. Now these 2-pack sets are available at goldspot.com only. Hey, we could even try something where I was just thinking maybe we could try putting a little bit more of this guy in here, putting this in here, and then seeing what we could do. Let's say putting the nib in like so. This is I'm just seeing if I could run it and then see the color transition. I think I might have put a little bit more magnetosphere than originally intended for this effect, but I'm assuming that as soon as I'll stop recording and then keep writing with it, that it'll end up changing the color. If I fill in some, but that's the kind of range that you have with this. This is, you know, you've got like a dark violet purple, and then you have this nice light blue that you could pick any color in between those two ranges and be able to go and pick out your color choice for the day. Well, it doesn't look like it's going to let up anytime soon with this purple, but you kind of get the idea. You could play with it, try out what kind of color that you would like to write with for the day, and then change it. You could, let's say, then next week you could, let's say when you're finished with the fill on this pen, and then say, you know what, I do want to go with a little bit more of a richer purple color. So then you would go with more magnetosphere, maybe a little bit of solar wind. You could play around with it and mix up whichever version that suits you the best, and write and enjoy and have fun with it. So like I mentioned, this is only available at goldspot.com. It is our own exclusive ink collaboration with Colorverse of South Korea, and they are limited in number, available currently. I think about 100 pieces are our first initial run, so we expect they'll probably last throughout the holidays, but if this is successful, we'll continue producing them as we go along. So I appreciate you guys tuning in for this demonstration and checking out Colorverse Aurora Borealis and the colors individually, solar wind and magnetosphere. And as always, stay inky, my friends. Take care.